the first value that trading has taught me that I pass on to my kids is the importance of having their own opinions, the importance of articulating their own opinions. And I know what you guys are going to say around directional delta opinions, but the point is, trading is about decision making, and you have to have an opinion to make a decision. You have to be able to articulate your point of view. You have to be able to be a critical thinker. You know, if you're going along with the crowd or whatever, with whatever you see in your news feed, consensus is the least profitable opinion. So being a critical thinker, being a potentially a contrarian, playing devil's advocate, periodically questioning your own deepest convictions and trusting the data, trusting the facts. I don't say facts over feelings because there's some dogma to that, but you get where I'm going. The second one is respectful disagreement. I say respectful disagreement because for every buyer in the marketplace, there is a seller. And while we might be competing, the buyer is appreciative of the seller because that seller provides them the opportunity for liquidity. They provide them the opportunity to express their opinion. Do I come on here every Thursday and have a good conversation, spirited debate with you guys? Sure. But I'm also getting the platform to express my opinion and learn from yours. The third, which then I will pause and let you guys, I'm looking forward to get your response, is the importance of free market enterprise. And I know that there's a lot of people that like to dog out capitalism, and there's a lot of problems with that system. But the older I get, the more affection I have for a world that allows me to be rewarded for my efforts, for a world that allows me to fail, and from a world that allows me to grow from failure as long as I personally have built resilience. I hope to pass on resilience into my children, that if they have a couple of bad trades, they still wake up and they still come back to the marketplace. And I think these are some values that the market has taught me that I wish to pass on to my children. I don't know what this is doing in the chat. Hopefully it's popping right now. Gentlemen, I'm going to open the floor.
Hold on. So you said just your three things, just to refresh: express opinion, free market capitalism. What was the second one?
Respectful disagreement.
Respectful disagreement. I'm just writing this down because these are new to me.
And you say, Victor, you sound like a guy who's playing the lottery tonight. That's what you sound like right now.
Okay, because I have done, in the last 24 years since we left the trading floor, and been doing a lot of, obviously 13 years on the network. We're coming up on our golden anniversary. I probably didn't know that. And all the years of webinars and seminars and live events I've been doing. And I've talked about trading and all the virtues and values and all the changes that it's made and helped and all this other stuff. The three things that I have never really talked about much are expressing opinions, respectful disagreement, and free market capitalism. So that's why I find it interesting that you picked those three.
All right, give me yours.
And I'm not sure how these three relate to your kids, other than,
bro, are you physically unable to have a discussion that is not an argument?
Wait a minute. Did he not build the platform that allows two people to come together with different opinions?
The framing of this discussion was I was inspired by a conversation with a kid from a younger generation. I wanted to come to you gentlemen in a world with.
All right,
hold on.
And we underperformed. You missed one very important one, I think, in my opinion, to bring it back to a serious point here. I think risk assessment is the one thing that you have to have in any one of these. It has to be your top one or two. I think the biggest problem, and you'll see it in Vanetta a lot, she's very risk adverse. It's been a dozen years here of watching us on the show, and she's very risk averse, even with her speech and her vernacular and things that she says. I think a lot of people have a hard time assessing risk. They think of it as like all or nothing. It's not all or nothing. I think you have to be able to assess risk.
I agree. So Vic, I would say
can I offer a counterpoint to that? Just
sure.
Because I love Vanetta.
I'm only using an example because she's easy. She's not here.
I know, and I think once I offer the counterpoint, I think we're going to agree. Knowing yourself and your own personal risk tolerance. So is it wrong that some people maybe are a little bit more conservative than other people, or other people are more willing to take on risk? No. knowing yourself, who you are, what type of risk you can actually handle so that you don't get yourself in a situation where you're reacting emotionally, that's important. And if you are on one part of the risk spectrum than the other, as long as you know who you are and what emotions and risks and swings you can handle, I think is important. Knowing yourself. There you go.
Okay, so I'm going to chime in now because I've listened to you for 10 minutes. Interesting. I kind of think that, and I'm glad you and E got a chance to spend some time together and talk about these things, but I think there's almost, I can't think of any topic in any industry. Like, these are the most general, generic things that I've ever heard. These have nothing to do with trading. Learning how to express an opinion, respectful disagreement, and let's talk maybe free markets to a little bit. But I really don't think that that is, there are some aspects of trading that I think are so critical to development and growth. And I don't, and I think you've actually, you guys might have missed them on this, or you didn't include them. And
this wasn't a part of our conversation yesterday, by the way. It just inspired this conversation. So I don't want if you're gonna dunk on me, I don't want Errol to be in the.
No, I'm not dumping him.
All me.
Yeah, I would never do that. He's a nice kid.
Tom, give me yours. What are your values?
Single most important thing is, because this is what's life changing, is the speed at which you make decisions. So the biggest takeaway from trading, in my opinion. And by the way, Tony's point about risk is a very close second. But the biggest takeaway for me is the speed at which your brain processes decision making and processes all those decisions you have to make. Because to go through life, if you want to eliminate all the potential biases against you, and biases can come from lots of different things. You know, they could be social biases, they could be intellectual biases, they could be economic biases. If you want to eliminate bias in life, then you have to be the fastest decision maker in the room. And then that's how you gain respect. That's how you push yourself and you differentiate yourself from everybody else. So for me, the most important thing about trading is that it teaches you how to process things way faster. One of the things it teaches you how to process way faster is risk. And it is a virtually instantaneous probabilistic assessment of different situations, because there is both an emotional and a monetary consequence with trades that you're making, because there is, there's economics involved, there's money involved. And so there's a real outcome. So for me, it's the speed at which you make decisions. It's the improvement in that decision-making speed, which will go on to carry you through, and I feel like one of the reasons that our kids are relatively normal is given, and I'm not kidding when I say raised by wolves, because most traders' kids were raised by wolves. I think that one of the reasons the kids turn out normal is because they have improved processing speed, because everything was done at a higher rate of change. And nobody, I did not give my kids I never said to my kids, why don't you take a couple days and think about it? It was more like, all right, make a decision. Okay, we got to move on. And I think that the speed at which you make decisions is really the key to being able to remove all the biases against you and to be able to put you in a true different class of differentiation.
I couldn't agree more. And as much as I'm killing you because you want me to come back at you, and I'm not going to.
No. This is not going to be a battle today. This is going to be a fun one. This is a.
Yeah, we're going to have fun. I'm going to give you 3 more. Okay.
Okay, please.
Something else it taught me that I think is pivotal to pass on to my kids, in my personal opinion, is to regulate my own emotions. At some level, obviously it's fear and greed, but there's a bigger lesson to be learned in applying that to life. But I think in participating in markets every single day, regulating your emotions is really important. The second is accountability. If something goes right, and more importantly, if something goes wrong, I'm financially responsible for that. Whatever pick I got off a newsletter or a timeline or a Discord chat or some piece of content I was watching, I am entirely responsible for my own outcomes and where I deploy my risk. And I think that's incredibly important in markets. If I lose money, it's not because the newsletter I was subscribed to, it's because I made a bad call.
Yeah.
Because the risk reward didn't make sense or the cards didn't go my way. And the third you mentioned is cognitive bias. To understand cognitive bias, markets taught me that. And now, I take that everywhere. When I watch news, and I almost never do because it's god awful, but when I do, I don't think, oh, that's a really interesting point by the panel. That's a really interesting opinion. This is what I go, why is the panel always an odd number of people? Doesn't that mean you're going to end up with more people on one side of an issue than the other? And if you're going to end up with one side on one issue on one issue than the other, isn't that the bandwagon effect? So aren't you having an impact on the viewer? And why do they always let one political bias go first on this network and the other political bias go first on the other network? Isn't that anchoring? By studying cognitive bias and trying to be aware of why I'm making decisions and deploying capital the way I'm deploying capital, it allowed me to see the world completely differently, not entirely in an objective fashion, but at least give me some hope of navigating a world that is full of incentives. I don't care what your belief system is. I don't care what you're saying. Show me your incentive structure so I know how to navigate what you're saying. That is more important to me. And I hope to pass on those values to my kids as well. Tom, I'm going to open the floor one more time. You can either take down those things as you chose to do the first time, you can agree, or you can add on.
No, I mean, I'll add on one thing which I think is important is, and I talk about this a lot, which is I do think that trading gets you to own your own decisions. I find that in life, especially, building businesses and investing in things and just, being kind of trying to be out there for better part of multiple decades. I find that a lot of people try to either not necessarily blame others, but push kind of the bad decisions or the mistakes onto others. And I think that it's very difficult for people to accept, their own success and their own failure. And I think one of the things that trading does is it almost forces you to own your own, your own decisions. And I think that is the turning point. There's a lot of investors out there that use money managers because they don't want to own those investment decisions. They're not comfortable with it. There's a lot of people that use newsletters or advisory services or whatever it is because they're not comfortable. They want, if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you have somebody to blame. I think in the trader realm, you kind of know, I mean, I do blame Tony and Scott a lot just because they're here, but, but the reality is I know that I'm responsible for all my own, and I embrace that. Like, I like that. I like the idea that I don't have to, that I can say, hey, I was successful, that my legacy is I was successful at this, and also that, here are my failures. I have no issue with that. I think that's a good part. And I think, really great athletes like, superstars like Jordan have always talked about things like that. And I think that, great and interesting business people talk about that kind of stuff too. And I like that. People that can own their own failures and their own success, I think it's really powerful. And if you could pass that down to your kids, you've done something.
Let me set the last one up for Tony, if you don't mind taking us out on this one. You, as a former floor trader, when I interact with all of you former floor traders, there's a code, there's an ethic, there's an honesty behind guys who held that profession for a long period of time. And I can't think of a more important value. That's a very important value to try to pass on. I wonder if you could speak to where that ethic comes from as a previous floor trader, how important that ethic was in that previous line of work.
Well, I mean, I grew up with a den of thieves, so they were always cheats and liars anyway, and I did not want to be that type of person. So for me, it was a little bit opposite. It was like kind of seeing that side and then not wanting to be that type of person. So for me, I think it started well before the floor. When we got to the floor, you could quickly find out who were people that you would want to hang out with outside of the business. And I don't mean hang out by have a beer or something like that, but somebody you could trust. Then somebody who was like somebody you would make a trade with, you'd send your clerk over there and you'd say, make sure you check this 2 or 3 times. There were even times when you would make trades with people, they would say, like mark it for them. Like they would make the person make a mark on the card because they weren't that, trustworthy, or you've had other kind of issues with them. I think, you have to be a man or person of your word. And I think the floor kind of, personified that. You don't have that problem anymore now because everything's electronic. So it's something that it's become a lot more like Twitter than trading is than being an honest profession. My opinion.
Gentlemen, we've done it. We did our first hear me out, where we didn't argue, we didn't take opposite sides, we just added to the table of values. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, but Victor, I think I'm going to need to have
coming for your head.
I think I'm going to need to have a discussion with you. So I'm going to give you this little signal here. Call me when you're if you're having a problem or something like that, and you need a little fatherly advice. I'm here for you.
No issues. I'm telling you, man. I was so inspired by Errol and the conversation I had with him yesterday, and the young people around Tasty. That I decided to take a different approach today.
No, you did a good job. Stay away from those people. Come back to the dark side. We'll be with you. We're gonna take a quick 90-second break and come back. We got more Tasty Live after this with a market measure. Tasty Live.